Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Kingsbury College, can I help you?
Oh, hello. I'm ringing to find out about one of your courses.
Yes. Is that a daytime or an evening course?
Evening.
Right. I'll just get a few details from you, if I may.
Fine.
Could I have your full name, first of all?
It's Peter Wright. That's W-R-I-G-H-T.
OK. And I don't need to know your exact age, but can you tell me which of these age groups you belong to? 18 to 25, 26 to 35, 36 to 45, or over 45?
18 to 25.
Fine. And do you have a job, or are you a full-time student?
I'm an accountant. I just do courses in my spare time for interest.
OK. Right. And your address, Mr. Wright?
It's 11 Forest Road.
F-O-R-E-S-T?
Yes.
Is that in Kingsbury?
Yes, it is. I'm just down the road here.
And do you have a phone number?
It's 992471. That's my home number. I haven't got a work number.
That's fine. We probably won't need it.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, you want to register for a course.
Yes, cookery.
Do you happen to know the exact title of the course? We've got Thai cookery on Wednesdays, or Mexican cookery on Fridays, or...
Mexican. I'd like to do both, but I'm busy on Wednesdays.
OK. Well, you can always do the other one next term, I suppose. Now, do you know when it begins?
Is it the 26th of March?
That's right. And it's £45 in total. That's including the ingredients. How would you like to pay? Card? Cash?
Can I send a cheque?
You can, yes, as long as it arrives at least 1 week before the start of the course.
OK.
And I'll just give you a reference number. If you could make a note of it and write it on the back.
Yes?
It's CZ943.
Yes, got that.
Good. Well, there's just one last question. Do you have any special requirements that I should make a note of?
Yes, there is one thing. I use a wheelchair.
Right, so you need to have access for that. OK. Don't worry, your room is on the ground floor, and I'll make sure there are no steps involved. We can always put a ramp in.
Thanks.
So, we look forward to seeing you on the 26th of March.
That is the end of Part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2.
Part 2.
You are going to hear a talk about Bell College.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Welcome to Bell College. The aims of the college is to foster the growth of international understanding through the provision of a high-standard educational course. Second, the college is based in a residential setting for adult students from abroad. And last is to make a positive contribution to the development of teaching English as a foreign language. Bell College is one of a group of schools run by the Bell Educational Trust, a non-profit-making educational foundation. The college offers an attractive environment for study and leisure for students aged 18 or over. 160 students live in comfortable single and twin study bedrooms on the campus, and a further 70 or 80 with carefully selected local families. The excellent common room facilities in the college are matched by the extensive gardens and sports fields. Superb academic facilities, including a modern learning centre and library and sophisticated computer networks, are available for students' use in class hours and in the evenings and at weekends. A wide range of courses is offered in 3 areas: the main English programme, teacher training, and English for specific purposes. The teaching staff are highly qualified native speakers with wide experience of working in schools, colleges, and universities in many parts of the world. Living in an international community of 30 or more nationalities is an important part of the Bell College experience.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
The main English programme, teacher training, and English for specific purposes. The teaching staff are highly qualified native speakers with wide experience of working in schools, colleges, and universities in many parts of the world. Living in an international community of 30 or more nationalities is an important part of the Bell College experience. Great stress is laid on pastoral care, and the college has its own medical centre. A busy and interesting programme of sporting, cultural and social activities is provided in the evenings and at weekends, with excursions to many parts of Britain.
That is the end of Part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 3.
Part 3.
You'll hear 2 university students discussing a social science lecture they attended.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24. Did you go to the first social science lecture yesterday?
Yeah. Didn't you see me there?
No. I was trying so hard to understand the lecturer.
What didn't you understand?
A lot of it, really. For example, he said we needed to study history as part of the course, but I didn't get why.
You probably missed it. He said early on that we need to learn from our past mistakes.
Right. But he also said we need to put ourselves in the place of our ancestors. Why is that?
I think the point is that it's not enough to know how they lived and what they did. We need to know what they thought.
I see. And I've written transferable skills in my notes next, but I have no idea what that means.
If you study social science, you learn skills that you can use in a job.
Oh, right. Is that all? Okay, but why is that?
The point he made was that in studying social science, you use a flexible and adaptable approach to learning.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
He also kept mentioning all the other subjects we will need to study as part of the course. I didn't write them all down, did you?
Some of them. I think I can make sense of my notes. The first one was anthropology, which he said would cover prehistory and archaeology as well.
Okay.
Then there's economics. I wrote down that this was not meant to mean that we will spend all our time looking at economic theory, but more that we need to see how humans behave.
That's good. I don't think I could handle economic theory. He said something about education too, didn't he?
Yeah. He said we'll be looking at how cultural information is handed down from one generation to the next through teaching children.
He said we'd be focusing on geography too, but I can't really remember which aspects. Can you?
I noted it down, I think. Here we are, yes, particularly in relation to urban planning. It's law that I got confused about. I didn't understand why he linked that to economics.
I think he meant that laws affect the way wealth is distributed.
That makes sense. Now, what are the science wars?
Okay, I did get that. The science wars are about how social science collects information. In sociology and social work, and in social science generally, they can only study patterns of behavior and observe. If you compare that to the way scientists work in physics or chemistry, it's very different because they use specific experiments that can be tested and which give concrete answers. Social studies is often accused of being unscientific. That's all.
Okay. But it still looks like a good course, doesn't it? You don't have any regrets, do you?
None at all. I'm looking forward to it.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk about the tall ships race in Britain.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
In July 1956, a fleet of 21 sailing ships from 11 countries raced each other from Torbay in Devon to Lisbon. The ships had been converted from cargo carrying to sail training ships. However, their future seemed uncertain, and the purpose of the gathering was to mark the passing of the age of the sail. What happened instead was that the sailing ships refused to say goodbye, and 2 years later they raced again, and the fleet was even larger. It was then that the title The Tall Ships was given to them, and the name remains today. The original organisers, the Sail Training Ship International Race Committee, now called the Sail Training Association, saw that a new international movement had begun, adventure training under sail. As race succeeded race, it became clear that the events had more to do with bringing adventure and widening the horizons of young people than of commemorating the passing of sail. Now, sail training ships began to be specially built, and young people from all walks of life wanted to participate. Now, to compete, a vessel has to satisfy just 3 requirements. It has to have a minimum waterline length of 9.09 metres. Half its crew must be between the ages of 16 and 25, and its principal means of propulsion must be a sail. Since 1972, the race has been sponsored by Cutty Sark Scots Whisky, and it has started to attract huge crowds of spectators. In 1984, more than 250,000 people lined the River Mersey in Liverpool to watch the fleet set off. And in 1986, 2 million spectators joined Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth at Newcastle upon Tyne to watch the parade. 1989 was the year that the spectacular Cutty Sark Tall Ships race started from London. A grand fleet of up to 100 vessels gathered on the River Thames near Tower Bridge on Tuesday the 4th of July. The only thing that the racing yachts, ancient and modern, had in common was their young crews. Few were expert sailors, and the majorities were strangers to the sea and to each other. Between Tuesday the 4th of July, when the fleet began to assemble, and Saturday the 8th of July, when the ships took part in a grand parade of sail down the River Thames, vessels were berthed on either side of Tower Bridge. Some were moored in the Pool of London, opposite the Tower of London, while others were moored to the east of Tower Bridge. Smaller vessels were accommodated in St. Catherine's Dock. Many of the larger ships were open to the public. It was an amazing and historic spectacle as the ships sailed slowly up the River Thames.
That is the end of Part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.